Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the season finale of Open Wheel for Amateurs Season 3 2023, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Imola, Bologna, Italy. Tonight's thrilling conclusion will have a 31-lap feature followed by a 22-lap sprint, all sponsored by AlienAwards.net and Ninja Botanicals. Nicholas Paletti and Zach Nurnberger have already clinched their championship wins in their respective classes, but positions are still up for grabs here in this series with a tough track laying ahead. Last week saw Paletti take the feature and Ken Huber win his first heat of the season with the sprint. In B class, Zach Nurnberger finished highest in the feature, and Christopher Craig set his best result of the season with an overall second place in the sprint. Tonight's race is another challenging, old-school track, nearly 75 years old, and with a multitude of memorable corners to try and muscle these cars through. Coming into this race, these are our overall standings. So as you can see, Nicholas Paletti up there with 255 points, no one even in the same stratosphere. Zach Nurnberger there with 210, and his next competitor, Stephen Thompson, at 174, so he has clinched that B-class victory as well. But as you can see, we got some close battles further back from there. Right now, fighting for third overall and second in A-class, Paul Boyle, Steve Cubay, and Ken Huber, all within 4 points, and all three drivers here at this race today. So we should see that get shaken out. B-class, still not locked up for Stephen Thompson there in second, as he has Kevin Berquist just 9 points behind him, and John Kelly just 5 points behind that. Christopher Newby, Richard Curry in the battle there in the middle as well, so we're going to keep an eye on a lot of these guys as we come through this race and see if they can change their championship hopes. But as we move to the track now, we got some qualifying laps starting to be put in. And Nicholas Paletti will try to get another pole position here on a pretty dominant season. Right now, all greens, no purple sectors. Ken Huber's got a purple in the third sector. Very difficult track that they have to deal with here. And it is going to be a challenge, not just in qualifying, but during the race as well. A lot of places to go off as he comes through Rivazza to try to finish out this lap. Off track is going to be a factor today, and that right there is a corner that may bite some drivers. It looks like Paletti made it through without getting in too much trouble. Ken Huber puts the first time on the board of 137.9, and Paletti is 0.3 back at a 38.2. Steve Cubay sliding in between those two as well. Adrian Garcia Vigil is on a stormer of a lap, however, right now. 3 purples with just that last straight. He's coming down. Let's see what that time puts him at. Surely he's got to put him up to first. And no time. So it was a 1:30. Well, we didn't see that. Yeah, the time was not a legal time, so he must have had an off track there. He has that pace, though. So let's see if this second lap is able to do a little bit better for him. But incredible pace there. Just unfortunately unable to get that lap valid. But we do see some other purples down there. It's Ken Huber, the current leader in qualifying right now, has a purple in that second sector, a green in the first. So we're seeing times continue to improve, and it's going to be difficult to probably put in 4 quick laps here. It takes a lot of focus through a lot of these chicanes. You got to really hit your braking markers, and these cars sometimes don't react well under hard braking. You know, it takes a lot of experience and a lot of deftness with that braking foot. So we'll see who's able to master that today in qualifying. Right now, Paletti, though, is up 3 purples out of the first 4 sectors. See if he's able to conclude the lap here. So he's just behind Ken Huber. We'll see Ken Huber's time come in first. Ken Huber surely will be an improvement. We wait for the official time to come across. Ken Huber with 37.4, and then Paletti jumping to 4/10 with a 37.0, setting 4 of 5 purple sectors there. That is going to be difficult to top. However, Ken Huber not that far off. Right now, John Kelly in 5th place, highest qualifiers. Now just got pipped down there to 6th, 7 thousandths behind Paul Boyle. But John Kelly, top runner of the B-class drivers right now. Still a lot of guys without a lap in, and I don't think that's because they're not on track. I think that they're not getting a legal lap in. Off tracks are going to be a factor here. Number of places where you can go out wide. Most painful, of course, being the final corner. If you string together a great lap, you can end it there at the very end of the lap. Stephen Thompson now up to 5th. Again, Thompson has to defend his 2nd place from Kevin Berquist in this race. Has that 9-point advantage, at least in the overall points. Not factoring in, of course, what the drop weeks look like. But Stephen Thompson certainly has the capability of coming out of here with that second place. John Kelly there jumping ahead of him now and just behind Richard Curry, just a few hundredths. So we watch these guys really struggle through a lot of these corners. Steve Cubase on green laps here. He's got a 6.5 gap to Ken Huber in front. So he has some catching up to do, but this lap so far is certainly shaping up to help him out in that category. So we can see there, only Ken Huber able to be within a second of Paletti. Ken Huber, an improvement on that lap, but not quite enough to get to Paletti. Paletti's lap was 0.4 slow. Wasn't able to get that kind of time. It looks like Steve Cubase, maybe something happened in that last sector because he was a second down, and he had been faster in all the other sectors up to that point. So we're seeing some more yellow sectors down there. Stephen Thompson, not one of them. He's only got one on that first sector. He's got 3 greens in a row here. Now he's finishing out the final corner. Certainly stayed within the track limits there. He's going to be powering it down the line, down this quote-unquote straight, which should be a passing opportunity into that first chicane of Tamburello, famous chicane. And Stephen Thompson's time hops him up to 4th overall, back to 1st for the B-class drivers, and 1.2 seconds off of that Nicholas Paletti time. Still a lot of drivers. No time put in. Dan Real, Christopher Newby, Andrew Garcia-Heel, which we saw having a great lap earlier in this session. Christopher Craig, Zach Nuremberger, Mark Dillon Jr., Travis Bell, and Kevin Bergquist. All drivers who do not have a time on the board yet. And with 2 minutes to go, I mean, the lap has to be started within the next 30 seconds. And I see a lot of these guys, I don't think they're actually on the track. So they may not be putting in a time. We may have a large amount of guys not putting in a time here on the circuit. It's not the shortest track in the world. It's about mid-length though, minute and a half for these guys in these F3 cars. And this is great to see because we got to miss this. We had to miss this race in real life with it when it got flooded out here in Imola. Ken Huber, another improvement, but unfortunately just shy of Nicholas Paletti, who does not have another lap in him. He's in the pit lane. Ken Huber will, it looks like, come out second place at best here, although I can imagine that's where it's going to be because no one is on the level of these two drivers right now in Paletti and Huber. Garcia finally putting in a lap there, proving me wrong right as I say it. Just 0.3 back, but not quite enough to keep up with those front two. So we see if there's any other times coming in. Stephen Thompson looking like he's going to try to finish a lap here. Might be an improvement. It is. He hops John Kelly yet again as they traded places all the way throughout qualifying. And he has now moved his way to 4th with Kevin Bergquist, his main competitor, back there not qualifying. That is a valuable thing for him to have. But let's see here. John Kelly, he's coming across the line. He is a purple sector, 3 greens. He may move himself ahead of Stephen Thompson. What is the lap time? It is a 1:37.3. He hops Stephen Thompson again, this time 0.3 back from Paletti. So here at the very end, showing some pace that is up there with those leaders that had been pretty uncontested for most of this qualifying session. John Kelly looking like he's going to come out here in 4th. Jeff McDonald is on the track, does not have the time to finish a lap here. So that is everybody that we're going to see as very challenging qualifying session for some of these drivers, a couple of them being A-class drivers as well, and they're going to have to be starting from the back. I don't know if we have a start from the back penalty. I will check on that while we hit this break, but let's verify the results real quick, and we'll be back in just a few seconds. All right, we are back, and to confirm, we do have a penalty. Kevin Berquist there, the driver who is competing with Stephen Thompson, has a start from the pits penalty today, so we will see Kevin Berquist starting from the pits here in this race. Probably be hoping for an early red flag just to help his case a little bit, but that is Nicholas Paletti on pole as they grid for the next few seconds here, getting ready for this race. Another standing start here where they will be running down into the Tamburello chicane, down through the Variante Villeneuve and into Tosa, and I think the field should start to really spread out at that point, but the lights are going to start lighting up here. Nicholas Paletti leading him out front. Ken Huber on his side. 2, 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's green. Nicholas Paletti, great start off the line. Ken Huber, good start as well. Vihil, good start. Looks like no incidents behind. Everyone making their way through. Christopher Newby making up a spot on Steve Cubey. John Kelly and Stephen Thompson fighting for that position through quals and in the race. Off the track for Stephen Thompson back there into the wall. Nicholas Paletti leads the field, but it looks like Stephen Thompson is, and that's a John Kelly off to the side as well. Both of our great qualifiers in the B class off the track. I don't know if there's any damage to either of those cars. Certainly John Kelly looked to be clean. Ken Huber making the move into Tosa on Nicholas Paletti. Nothing he can do to defend. That is a pass made. That is a new leader for the race. Ken Huber trying to get another win after winning the sprint race last time out. And look at that. Vihil is trying to make a move here as well. Paletti, of course, already has the championship locked up, but he is not going to be shying away from any competition in this race. But Ken Huber pulling out to a lead here early. Wonderful start for Ken Huber. This field's starting to spread out just a little bit, as we see a gap starting to form, and not only just from first to second, but we have now 10 seconds separating the bulk of the field already at this point. Actually, Stephen Thompson and John Kelly have really rejoined the back of that field. Kevin Berquist, starting from the pits, is 10 seconds back from that. Coming across the line, finishing the first lap here at Imola, and Ken Huber made the move on Nicholas Paletti. Wonderful pass that he made to make himself into that first place position. Fastest lap of the race for him, of course. Further behind, Greg Holland is currently the leader for the B class, but he is being pressured from behind by Zach Nurnberger. He's having to worry about that fight behind, but look at the guys up ahead, as we are seeing some tight battling there in front of him. Real, 10th back from McDonald, 3/10 back from Curry. These three guys all fighting for 7th, 8th, 9th. All the top 9 positions in the A class so far. No move made into Tosa here like we saw Ken Huber do. Zach Nurnberger, potentially an incident. He's just stopped on the track. What could have possibly been the case here? Come through Tamburello, it looks like. Or that was through Villeneuve, and then he just stops. I don't know what happened there. I do know the reason we do not have Christopher Craig in this race, a hand injury, unfortunately, taking him out of this race, unable to do it. That looked like right there he finally got it going again. Some sort of mechanical issue, it looks like. But we have had a number of incidents back here. Greg Holland, Jeff McDonald, Christopher Newby, all going off the track and rejoining. I don't know if any of them have some major damage here. You can see how they've lost some positions, all those guys. Right now, Mark Dillon Jr., one of our biggest gainers, up 5, and Dan Real up 10 spots. Started dead last and is moved his way all the way into the bulk of that A-class field already. 38-2 for Ken Huber on that last lap. Garcia Vihil trying to make the move on Paletti. He has the draft. He's around the outside through Tamburello, and a collision between the two. A collision between the two. It looks like there should have been larger damage than there ended up being. Garcia struggling to rejoin the track here. What's Nicholas Paletti's car look like? Well, he's got Steve Cubey already right on the back of him, so I don't know if he's got... I mean, it doesn't look to have visual damage. Let's take a look at that incident again. It came through Tamburello, and yeah, Nicholas Paletti just unfortunately hitting that curb on the inside that ended up shooting him out into the path of Vihil as he tried to stay out of the way, but unable to do so after clobbering that curb. Looking like his car got away, mostly scot-free, despite the size of collision that we saw. but it did look a little bit tougher for Vahil. He's now down to 11th place, and potentially damage to make it worse. Although, again, on this car, I don't see any damage, so it's going to be a long race. But we do have a pit stop in the strategy. I think it's a little bit too early for it, however. Meanwhile, John Kelly here at the front of the B-Class field, now trying to make his way into the A-Class drivers, as he has Christopher Newby and Richard Curry both in the same car to make things extra confusing right in front of us. Steve Cubay just made the move on Nicholas Paletti there. Paletti may be suffering a little bit from some unseen damage on that car. Let's take a look at that move and see if that made sense where that was. Just a nice send by Cubay there. And a lockup for Paletti on the outside to boot as they make their way through Ravazza. Not the most common passing opportunity, but that may spell a little bit to the condition of Paletti's car. Jeff McDonald, incident further back. Looking like the car's already going maybe a little bit slowly. Hard to tell. This comes into the very tight brake. Just loses it on the brakes there, unfortunately, into Grassini, and does get it going again. Just had to stop. Didn't have the turning radius quite there to make it, but I think there may have been something up with that car already. John Kelly making the move. There nearly was a collision there. I don't know if there was a tap as they go through Tosa. It looked like there may have been a little bit of a bump. John Kelly certainly close enough there. Had the speed through Villeneuve, but couldn't quite make the move stick. He's going to stick all over the back of him here as they head through Paratella. Tough corner to really make anything happen. So he's going to have to follow into Aqua Minerale. Another tough multiple apex corner as they head through 11, 12, and 13. Brake rotors lighten up for Kelly's car. A little bit loose in front for Christopher Newby. Does that give John Kelly a bit of a run? I don't think it's quite enough to make anything happen as he stays behind. Greg Holland was running at the front of her B-Class earlier, had an incident that we didn't catch earlier on camera, and then another incident here for him, unfortunately, as he comes around Tosa, and car just getting a little bit loose on that elevation change. No move for Kelly here on this lap. Another fastest lap set by Ken Huber there with a 1:38.1. Apologies that there no track map available for this race, so there's why that graphic's not showing up for you there. We can see here our sector times. Chris Newby was getting pressured quite heavily from Kelly behind, but now he's been an improvement and has pulled away from Kelly on the last 3 sectors now. See if he's able to continue that trend, basically matching each other there on that. As Newby himself is also starting to catch up to Richard Curry again, to potentially try to make that move into 6th place. Dan Real has now made his way into 5th as well, up 12 spots from where he started. Wonderful race for him so far. And the reverse grid positions right now is interesting because we have Garcia Vigil out of that top 10. And that's not the place you want to be heading into the sprint race. At the very least, if you're going to have a bad feature, you want to finish 10th so that you can start the race on that reverse grid pole. So Real now catching up to Paul Boyle while Paul Boyle catches up to Paletti. So surely Paletti has something plaguing him on that car there, as we really saw Huber and Paletti have unmatchable pace for much of that qualifying, and it just looks like he's continuing to slip away a little bit. Now about 2.5 seconds from Steve Cubay and a whole 8.5 seconds from Ken Huber, and that pass was on the track. He was past that gap has been made on the track between those two drivers. There has to be something a little bit wrong with Paletti's car. He can get that fixed in the pit stop, however. Greg Holland having another incident here. He's just there. It looks like maybe he had spun coming out of Ravazza and just struggling to get it back on the track safely. I think he wants to go into the okay. So he wanted to go into the pits there. Oh, he has really bad damage. That car's not driving straight. So damage that we didn't catch earlier in a crash, and unfortunately forcing him to make a early pit stop here. And I think that's going to be out of the strategy as well. Dan Real hounding Paul Boyle here, as Paul Boyle wants to get around his teammate. Now, Paul Boyle absolutely in a fierce battle for that A-Class second place. He's currently got the grip on it, but he's only 2 points ahead of Steve Cubay, who is a couple positions ahead of him now, and only 4 points ahead of Ken Huber, who's in first. So, I mean, I don't even know. You would have to factor in the drop weeks. I think Ken Huber has the advantage here for that, as far as who would come out of this feature race on top. But right now, difficult to predict where that second place is going to go. And Paul Boyle does not want to lose this position to Dan Real. He wants to get that position from his teammate, although he's actually struggling to catch up and really make that move. He's more on the defensive right now, just like Christopher Newby is. And Christopher Newby, we have seen be a defensive prowess in especially the latter half of this season. And John Kelly has been, unfortunately, experiencing that here, as he's been stuck behind him. Is he making the move here? He's making the move on the inside, and he couldn't quite get the run through. He's going to have to try to slip back into the draft, see if something can happen down the straight here. Through Bravazza, tried to make it happen on the inside, but just didn't quite have that momentum to head his way through. Moves to the inside, moves to the outside. Now it's going to be the outside of Tamborello. There's a crash in front. There's a crash in front. Multiple drivers. That's Paul Boyle. That's Dan Real. And a huge collision there for Christopher Newby. John Kelly may have avoided that. I don't think he had any damage. And Newby is upside down on the track. What a horrible wreck for so many drivers there at the front. Let's see if we can figure out what caused the start of that. It was something with Dan Real and Paul Boyle as they head into turn one here. Dan Real heading to the outside, Paul Boyle on the inside, and Boyle his car just didn't turn. And Newby not really slowing down for that. Does look like Kelly got through without any incident. All the other drivers making their way through as Paul Boyle does not drive in their way. But I don't really know what happened to Paul Boyle's car there. Let's see if we can get a look at the cockpit view of Paul Boyle. See what he was seeing coming into this corner, because maybe there was a lockup that we didn't see from that camera. Maybe Real turning in a little bit early there as well. Just a bit of a racing incident there, I think, unfortunately. And Christopher Newby having an exciting run into that into that turn one as well. We see here. This is going to be his view as he comes into turn one. Started on the brakes, kind of let off, hoping to sail through that incident that nobody was going to move, but getting involved, and unfortunately came off the worst of everybody in that incident. So a bit of a shakeup in the field. A lot of guys coming in for their pits. Paul Boyle, Richard Curry, Chris Newby. Obviously, Chris Newby towing into the pits. And Stephen Thompson has now inherited that first place for the B-Class drivers, with Mark Dillon Jr. just right behind him, just half a second back. Mark Dillon Jr. now up 11 spots, and easily the largest gainer of the field. One of many drivers that didn't put in a qualifying time, but still made up all of these positions on track. We have a little bit of stratification through the rest of the field, but these four guys, Thompson through Kelly, all have that capability of fighting for these positions, especially for the fact that three of these guys are in the B class. So this is what we're looking at as far as the B class podium right now, with Adrian Garcia getting himself involved in here a little bit. If we take a look at the start of this race again, off that grid, Nick Spoletti got a decent run, and it looked like Ken Huber had a better run off the line, but wasn't quite able to make anything happen in the turn one, but enough to maybe shallow the entry angle for Poletti. And let's see if that kind of comes to fruition here. Vihil having to back off as he wanted to make that move for second place. And Poletti still seeming like he was okay up here at the front, and it looks like he got a little bit on those rumbles, a little bit more than he would want, and had to let off the throttle, I think, more than Huber had to. And then Huber making his way through in a bold move right at the start of this race. We have another incident here for Real. He's already made his pit stop, I believe, for that damage. And then here in turn one, it looks like, again, same spot, obviously different type of incident here, and spinning the full 360, getting going again, just maybe overheated those tires a little bit. But Vihil here is extra close to Mark Dillon Jr. Again, Vahil had a couple incidents that we've seen so far. It looks like Mark's had a pretty clean race, so there may not be too much fight here given up between these two drivers, as they're not really in the same class. I mean, every position's for points, but yeah, he's going to let him go here, I think, because he goes a little bit wide. So Vahil making his way around as Dylan Jr. picks up an off track, but no damage, and just as worried about trying to defend that position from John Kelly behind, I think. They find their way around the final quarters of this track here, and 10 laps into this 31-lap race, hitting about that 1/3 mark. Shouldn't be too far away from when the drivers can make their pit stops, and that'll be an important thing to keep an eye out for to kind of get what we're looking at for the sprint race. It does look like Christopher Newby there is in the pits, and I don't think that he's going to be coming out. He's been in the pits for a while, so maybe a de facto retirement from this future race, but we may see him in the sprint. Again, Christopher Craig said it's just too much work on his hands. I think he got bit by a dog, I believe, and just a little bit too much for his hands at this very difficult track. And Travis Bell, not sure why we didn't see him take the grid, but we'll keep an eye out and see if we see him take that sprint race start. Of course, only appeared at one other race this season, so wasn't in contention for any of the real championship positions up there, but had a very good outing last week with, I think, the second highest point total of all the drivers. Nicholas Piletti scoring 45 points, Travis Bell at 44. Nearly had the event win, but maybe we will see him again in the futures. He had to miss most of the start of this season, but it was good to see him here. May see him next week at the finale for Ifere as well, so keep an eye out for that. John Kelly here, trying to catch up to Mark Dillon Jr. It does look like that stagnated a little bit. Dillon going wide and letting Vahil by, and he's letting Kelly by here, right as I say that. I don't know if I cursed anything happening there. It wasn't really that much pressure. Meanwhile, Ken Huber is really showing up the whole field. 137.8 on his last lap, which is the fastest lap of the race. Now, Steve Cubet, last lap was a 137.97. Very impressive in his own right. Really nobody else running those kind of times, but he's going to have to be a lot faster. Not just, he has to be faster and a lot faster to catch up that 8-second gap that he's got right now between the two guys. So Nicholas Piletti not able to be putting in that pace right now. His last lap was a 139.04. Maybe evidence, again, of that damage from the earlier incident, which, he looked more aggressive than it really turned out. It does seem like Vahil, maybe his pace, although he lost more time in the incident, looks like maybe his pace really hasn't been affected by it as much as Piletti's has. It's Piletti now 6 seconds off of Cubet. Doesn't have to worry about behind. He was about to get attacked by his teammate Paul Boyle, among some others, and Paul Boyle falling out of that there, so still a lot of racing to go, not only in this heat, but in the sprint race as well. But with Paul Boyle being in a very tight battle with Steve Cubet and Ken Huber, it's not looking good, especially for the fact that Ken Huber has he's got some drop weeks. These drop weeks are lower than Paul Boyle's are, other than the missed race that Paul Boyle had. So the results that they both have here should have Huber making up those points, in the overall standings. And if he finishes first here and has a decent first race, he's still got to worry about Cubet, who's actually 2 points ahead of him. So let's not even get into that. But this does seem like it'll be very difficult for Paul Boyle to now come out of this race in second after that unfortunate incident there into the Tamburello chicane. Dan Real making another pit stop there. I don't know if it was potentially an incident limit. Mark Dillon Jr. maybe regretting giving up the position to Kelly, as he's had the pace to keep up with Kelly here. I think there may have been a slowdown that we didn't catch, and that's maybe why he gave up that spot. That's the only thing I can think of, because he wasn't really getting pressured. I understand him giving up the position of Vahil earlier, because two drivers not really in the same class, and Vahil really coming back from a pretty big incident, showing that he really had the pace to get around quickly. But John Kelly and Mark Dillon Jr. here putting in very similar lap times. Last lap time was a 1:39.3 for Kelly and a 39.27 for Mark Dillon Jr. but no move made there into Tosa. Another wide moment there for Mark. And the drivers will have to be worrying about those safety points, as that's, again, another... Oh, and a spin there as he comes up the hill through Piratella, narrowly avoiding that wall. Is he able to get going again without losing another spot? He's got Kevin Bergquist coming up. You can hear him in the back. There's Bergquist. Is he going to be able to get around? I don't think he will, so maybe Mark Dillon Jr. able to keep this position at least, but falling way off the back of John Kelly, obviously, from that incident. Lucky to keep it out of the wall. And, just try to get focused back on that road again. But Kevin Bergquist, he's going to be making the move. So Mark Dillon Jr. giving him the room to make his way around. Meanwhile, another move might be made soon. Vihil storming through the field, looking to make the pass for 4th overall on Stephen Thompson. Don't think Stephen, again, will be fighting this too hard into turn 1. Tamburello is going to fall behind, and he is just going to be worried about keeping that pace up from John Kelly behind. That's a 5-second gap, and driving behind now is Richard Curry, I believe, who is not for position. So that car behind Stephen Thompson, that's that one that just came in frame there. The yellow car of John Kelly, that's his competitor. So it's looking pretty good for Stephen Thompson so far, who just really needed to have a good race over Kevin Bergquist. Just needed to not get beat too much by Kevin Bergquist. Had that 9-point advantage on him coming into here, and a 14-point advantage on John Kelly. John Kelly having a great race here, but he'll have to have a pretty good advantage over Thompson in that sprint race to come out here ahead of both Bergquist and Thompson, I think. So we are now looking at lap 14 of 31, nearing the halfway point for this race. It has been a difficult first couple laps, but I would say that in general, drivers have handled the last section, or this middle section of the race, quite well, with just a couple minor incidents, nothing taking out the entire field at least. And should we say, another very clean race start as well, as we're just getting used to those standing starts over the course of this whole season. Of course, I think we went 6 straight heats with red flags, and I think we've only had 1 red flag since that point. So the standing starts didn't start so clean, but have really worked their way out as these very competitive drivers have kept it racy on the start of the race in those opening laps, but still keeping it clean for the most part. John Kelly off track for a couple seconds here. Don't think he lost too much time. Into Tamburello, it looks like, and yeah, just a lockup. And that's what I thought maybe had happened to Paul Boyle, and I think there may have been an element of that in that incident between Boyle and Real earlier in this race. It just looked like an early turn-in for Real before he had the gap to do so, and I think Boyle maybe shooting a little bit wider than he was hoping to, as they both were really fighting for that position hard. Unfortunately, hasn't benefited or hurt either one really too much than the other. Paul Boyle currently running down there in 11th. Real essentially out of this race here in the pits in 14th. You see Vihil hitting those curbs there. Some of these curbs you can hit, and other ones will end your race. We actually saw Paletti hitting the curb. That's what caused the crash earlier in this race with Vihil, as we see on screen here. And it just, you got to figure out which ones are safe to touch, which ones aren't. Looking very keen to stay in track there, Vihil. I wonder if maybe just worried about that final corner, or if he is maybe getting a bit of incident points here, as we've seen him already in a collision and off track a couple times. And he might be thinking about that final corner as a bit of a temptation to go off track and really eliminate those safety points, which that's something that I have failed to mention so far, talking about these guys here who are competing for positions in this final race. The safety points are a huge amount. I mean, the safety points you can earn a maximum of 10, and 10, I mean that's like 5 places. That's a huge difference in points. It ends up being about a fifth or more of your total points scored on the weekend. So we can kind of estimate where these drivers are going to finish in the championship based on their finishing positions here, but the safety points are going to play a major role in it, at the end of this, especially given that they don't drop. So even if a driver has not the greatest week, and they had some other good ones, so this one ends up being a drop week for them, as long as they keep those safety points going, they can still pull those points in without the drop week affecting them. Ken Huber here up at the front as now his competitor Steve Cubey driving into the pit lane. And Nicholas Paletti going into the pits as well. So Steve Cubey coming in here, second place. Paletti's still able to be in third, and we're now going to see him get his car fixed up. See if we actually see anything on the car here get fixed. That's usually the easiest time to tell when there's a big difference. I didn't see anything. Either he didn't have his fast repair on, or the damage that he had maybe didn't exist, or just wasn't. I don't know, but it didn't look any different to me on the screen. He's going to come out here now behind Kevin Bergquist, as again a lot of these drivers still need to make their pit stop. But Ken Huber will be looking to see him come into the pits as he comes around this lap for the final time. Just barely past that halfway point. Compared to what we saw a couple events ago with the Spanish Grand Prix, it wouldn't surprise me to see that pit stop necessary to be just about at that halfway point of the race. Without the red flags, we've seen some of these tracks difficult to even make happen on the one stop. Ken Huber is coming in here at the end of lap 16. We'll start lap 17 as he makes his way through this pit lane. And we'll expect those drivers behind him that haven't pit yet, which is Garcia, Thompson, and Bergquist. Expect them to come in as well. And we'll keep an eye on what that gap between Cubey and Huber looks like coming out of the pit stop here. Cubey was back, I think, 8 seconds or so. We'll see if that's changed at all. Obviously, no tires. It doesn't seem to be the move for any of these drivers so far that I've seen to be taking any tires on this pit stop. And this is Ken Huber exiting the pits. Garcia into the pits, and Thompson is staying out, I believe. So Thompson able to take this extra long. See if this fuel strategy pays off for him. He's got Garcia right behind him on track. Look at the pit strategy here. Yeah, Thompson not having made his pit stop yet. Certainly didn't make it there. And interesting strategy. I don't know if really anybody else has done that because, Garcia, I believe, has now made his pit stop with the rest of the drivers behind now. So wonderful fuel strategy for Thompson as far as being able to stretch that tank as far as possible. We'll see if that really pays off with a position for him or not. But it is a bold strategy to take here. As long as he's able to keep up that pace, he's not losing too much time with that fuel saving. Get a couple drivers here, a couple seconds apart, coming out of the pits. And Bergquist, again, driver who had to start from the pits, and with no red flag, extra brutal, because he had to make up all that empty gap up to the field, and has done so to make his way up to 8th place. I mean, started 15th, but he may as well have been the 17th runner because he had to, or started 13th, may as well have been the 17th runner because he had to start all the way in those pits. So it's been a good recovery for him so far. And again, Mark Dillon Jr. there, despite giving up a couple positions lately, still up 7, starting in 16th. And a good start for him as well, as we haven't seen any incidents that he's been involved in. Not a lot of drivers have been free of incidents. Well, when I say incidents, I don't mean incident points. I mean crashes. Not a lot of drivers have been free of crashes in this race. Stephen Thompson now finally coming into the pits, as we expected. Well, I guess we expected it at last lap as well. So kept going and didn't seem to be too slow of an in-lap either. Currently in 4th as he now is able to accelerate to speed. See if Fahil is able to catch up to him here. But it looks like Thompson is going to be ahead. He's probably going to get passed by Garcia here, as they are on the totally different strategies. Garcia, and I cursed him. He went off track. No collision, no damage, but does go off track there at Tamburello. Maybe the existence of that slow-moving Thompson coming out of the pits, just not fully up to speed, throwing him off a little bit into that braking zone, but able to recover the car deftly and keeps it going. But he's going to have to make up that 4-second gap now, and it's going to be even more difficult to try to make any spots if anything happens. So you can see they come through this wonderful uphill section through Paratella, difficult section of the track into this downhill multiple right-hander of Aqua Minerale, and no moves. We will never see a move made through that section there. That is a section of survival, but actually we haven't seen anybody have any big incidents there yet so far. Meanwhile, Zach Nurnberger all over the back of Jeff McDonald here, trying to make the move, and wants the outside, but it is a long run. It looks like McDonald's going to give him the space through Tosa. They're going to be heading up to the right through Piratella. We just saw that difficult uphill to the left, and I wonder if Jeff McDonald's going to fight this too hard. He is still keeping it in there. He's backing off. He's backing off through, and it looks like wide for Nurnberger. Is he going to rejoin? He's going to rejoin. If we were fighting here for position, like a championship, I think maybe McDonald would have been a little bit on the horn to some stewards to try to get him to give up that position because he went off track to make that pass. But I don't think that he is going to complete too much here. I think they're on different strategies, these couple guys. And it looks like Nurnberger able to hold that position. McDonald keeps shading out for some braking, but I don't think he's actually trying to make that move. It looks like there was a little bit of a lockup behind as well. Let's head down the straight. Nurnberger here, wanting to keep that lead. He's got 6/10 now to McDonald behind, and the spot in front, Mark Dillon Jr., 20 seconds. So kind of out of touch for him for the end of this race here. 12 laps to go. It's more about surviving the last bit of this. That was slow through that Tamburello chicane. McDonald catching up quite a lot through that section, but not making the move yet. Another twitch there for Nurnberger. He goes that low wide there in the exit into Tosa. So that's basically what we saw the Paletti do, and Jeff McDonald trying to pull a Ken Huber into Tosa, but didn't quite have the overlap to make that move yet. Up through Piratella, through the left-hander, where we just saw Nurnberger go wide last lap, able to keep it in track that time. And he's not quite pulling away enough to shake McDonald, but McDonald not making any moves so far. Meanwhile, Vihil, as we saw, coming out of the pits right behind Thompson and making that mistake instantly there in the Tamburello chicane as he goes through it right now. And was certainly a little bit, I think, surprised just by the presence of Thompson's car, and is trying to catch that gap back up. But it does look like it's being a little bit difficult to do so. He was 4/10 slower, or 4/10 faster on the last lap, excuse me. And he's got 3 seconds to go with 11 laps to go. It's enough to be done if he continues that kind of pace. But Thompson may have a little bit in the tank, both literally and figuratively. We, of course, saw him pit later than everybody else. So he may be a little bit happier on the fuel situation than Garcia is here. And that'll be a factor as we come into the last couple laps, or as we've even seen in the last couple corners. McDonald closer than he has been since he got passed by Nurnberger. Both these guys luckily in that top 10 for the reverse grid, so this is really a battle over who's first and who's second in the reverse grid, as currently Richard Curry 23 seconds back from those guys. But if anything were to happen, of course, that puts Richard Curry in that conversation. But this is really the fight for who takes the place on the front row, as they're quite a bit ahead of 11th place and quite a bit behind 8th place as it stands. Personal best for Nicholas Paletti, still not breaking into the 37s like we saw Huber and Cube do earlier in this race, but maybe going to show that there was some damage on that car, considering that we're not seeing Huber and Cube put in their best laps right now in this race, but Paletti is. So the situation, or the conditions on the track may be getting a little bit less conducive for those lap times, as Huber was a 38.2 and Cube was a 38.7. John Kelly here. Brake rotors lit up red hot and just avoiding a spin there. Again, a smart reaction to avoid what could have been a worse incident through Ravazza. Tough braking zone as you are heading downhill into that section of a double left-hander, both left-handers with an opportunity to go too wide. And of course, that was a little more than a little too wide. The lockup forcing him out into the gravel on a slow rejoin. So John Kelly and Richard Curry in the pit lane. And I have to wonder if maybe they had pit earlier. Let's see if we catch a look at that. John Kelly coming in 2 laps. So maybe that going wide there was a result of some damage that we didn't catch, because a little bit strange to have come in. Curry, though, had pit after lap 8, so he wasn't going to make it to the end. He needed to pit regardless. Zooming over the camera, coming through this section, these two guys have been the closest to each other on track for the last while. And McDonald just really trying to wheel that car around and catch up to Nürnberger to make the move. We saw him close a couple times, not really in a passing zone, however, and just haven't seen that attempt happen yet. But it does seem like he's beating Nürnberger on the brakes in a lot of these hard braking zones, but just isn't starting those braking zones close enough to try to send the car ahead. And the draft is a little bit weak from that gap that they are right now as they come through, as they came through Ravazza, looking like not catching up too much. Oh, Paul Boyle out. Paul Boyle's car, there's just, well, that smoking car is not his car. That's Christopher Doobie. This is Paul Boyle here. What just happened? Oh, and then a spin nearly impacting the drivers behind. No crash, though, but maybe just a little bit frustrated with how it went. Was hoping to be the driver to put it in second place in the championship. And all honesty, if he had just stuck in this race, it very well could still be on the cards. He would be starting here in reverse grid pole in 10th, but he is now, of course, fallen to 11th with John Kelly taking that spot, even despite having taken that second pit stop. So Paul Boyle is out of this race and will not finish second in the championship in the A-Class as he currently is. That is going to be between Steve Cube and Ken Huber. If my mental math is doing me right, Steve and Ken are going to come out of this race here tied on points. And after that, actually, I think Ken Huber may be ahead by 1. Yeah, with the 3-point differential, Ken Huber actually may be ahead of this by 1 single point heading into the sprint race, where they'll both be starting at the back of the field. Here we see Vihil has finally caught up to Thompson. He's really caught up a lot over the last couple laps here. It was looking like the pace he was catching up was going to end up putting him there around lap 28 or 9, and he's already there now, so it's only a matter of time as he wheels it through Aqua Minerale, coming up to a lapped car. I think of John Kelly there. Yeah, not too close to affect anything so far. Vihil making his presence known, not making any aggressive moves yet. Looks like Thompson may have gone wide. Vihil definitely going wide there. But worth it to keep it fast here in this section of the track. Down into final couple corners of this lap of Ravazza. And it's the move being made. Let's take a look at that move again as we get a different view on that. We're a little bit far away from it. So just a lockup for Stephen Thompson on the outside, able to immediately rejoin the track. Actually, it was from the angle we were looking at, almost tough to tell that he was even off the track there. But able to get back on the track, and Thompson sticking behind him here. See if he's able to make that move. Thompson now the only driver to be in the same position that they started the race in. as he started this race in 5th, has been up and down and made his way back to 5th place now, which has been a great finish for him, as a lot of drivers right behind him have made up a lot of spots, including Kevin Bergquist, again, his main competitor, but 24 seconds back, one position. I mean, he's not going to lose the position to Kevin. It's just that, of course, one position is one position of points. Doesn't matter how close they are. So Thompson, who has the 9-point advantage, will come out here now with an 11-point advantage. Should be pretty safe to take home the 2nd place in that B-Class championship. And that's even if he doesn't get a move done on Vahil to retake 4th. Jeff McDonald falling off the back of Nürnberger. If you're wondering how that happened, well, there's first. So yeah, that was into Ravazza. So he first has this incident. So close. He sends it to the inside way deep. Doesn't even get it slowed down. Nürnberger lucky to not be involved in that. And then McDonald, unfortunately, another incident as he tries to get it going. Let's take a look at that incident again from a different view here as we see Nürnberger's view. Mighty close between those two guys. Heading into Ravazza. And, oh, yeah, McDonald already getting loose as he was a little bit faster through that crest, I think, than he expected. And just a bit of twitch on the wheel, and which was not prepared for the braking zone. Oh, and that's a Thompson ahead of Garcia. So he just moved away from that. Here was the move being made. Stock standard move down the straight. Thompson keeping close enough through Ravazza and able to make the move before they head down into Tamburello. Vahil not fighting it too hard as he had already kind of lost a lot of advantage there. But that is, and then he just lost the spot again. He just went wide. Stephen Thompson going wide and losing the spot to Vahil. Let's see this. They come through the 2nd chicane, I believe, of Villeneuve, and yeah, just a little bit wide and just not wanting to get in the way too much of Vahil there. Meanwhile, McDonald has had an incident himself. Lost a lot of time to Nürnberger there. And now coming through this chicane, the curbs just unsettling that car a little bit. Luckily onto the pavement to get himself going again. Now Mark Dillon Jr. here, bringing it sub 1 second to Kevin Bergquist. Fastest lap of the race for Nicholas Paletti, a 37.49. Flying out there on the track right now, unfortunately, just too far back to make anything happen here in this heat with only 5 laps to go. Not unfortunately for him, has the championship clinched. So the results of this race were not entirely crucial. Richard Curry has had another incident. He's in the pits. And he is going to finish 11th at the best. Greg Holland looks like he's out on track still, so may be able to take that spot from Richard Curry. But it does seem like John Kelly is going to be the guy that's going to be on that reverse grid pole for us in this sprint race as we reverse the top 10. So Dillon Jr., last lap was a 38.64. Kevin Bergquist, a 39.16. Nearly a whole half second faster. We'll see if he has the confidence to make a move into any of these braking zones. We've seen plenty of opportunities in this race so far. Moves made all over the track at all different points. So if the pace is there, the opportunity absolutely is as well. It's going to be pulling out to the side here. This will be a bit of a brave attempt as they come up through the hill. I don't think anything's going to happen to Pertella. Going to stick behind him and try to size up something a little bit more toothsome. Maybe after they head through Aqua Minerale and the Gracini chicane, maybe able to make that pass into Ravazza. We've seen some moves being made into Ravazza. Seems to be a popular spot so far in this race, as well as into the Tamburello chicane, even down the straight before they get to that point. Dillon Jr. falling back a little bit through the Gracini chicane, it looks like. So he's not going to be making a move here into Ravazza this lap at least. Had been just a couple tenths back, but something in that chicane slowed him down a little bit compared to his competitor Bergquist in front. Heading down the straight, far enough back, he's not getting a super strong toe, and yeah, you can see the Richard Curry there back on track. So he has passed Greg Holland, not losing that 11th place spot. Just in case anything were to happen to any of these top 10 guys, that 11th becoming 10th is a valuable change. As Dylan Jr. Also slowing back into that first chicane. So I don't know if this is just maybe a mistake. We didn't really see any lockup or anything. He was really fast in the previous couple laps, and with fuel being something that seemed a bit marginal, at least as far as when they made their pit stops, potentially that's what's coming into play here, is he's having to do a little bit of fuel saving as he's now dropped to about a second and a half back. Meanwhile, Ken Huber here has now lapped the entire field, not in a short track, 5-kilometer track, lapped the entire field through 6th place. Has kept himself free of incidents and made that great move for position into the Tosa corner on lap 1. And he is now a 17-second advantage behind. Now, Paletti just went off track, lost a little bit of time. Not a lot. Nothing ending his race here, but that is a aggressive clattering of those curbs, and I think he is exceptionally lucky to have that be the result there, because that was a huge collision with that curb, and I'm quite surprised it didn't end up getting worse than that. Take another look from his view here, just a little bit wide, a little bit of understeer, and I can't believe the car kept going straight. It seems destined to go into the wall, narrowly avoids that curb as well as he rejoins, but back on the track, no sweat, and was not in threat of losing that position behind him either. He has 8 seconds on Vihil behind the driver who he collided with earlier in this race. Both those guys getting into a collision in turn 1, caused by a curb strike by Nicholas Paletti. This time, though, it was on the inside as he was just trying to give room on the outside, but did that a little bit too much. Mark Dillon Jr., right when I thought he had kind of written off trying to make that move, he has now caught back up to Bergquist. On the last lap was 7/10 slower, but has caught up a ton in this lap here. You can see there's almost 6/10 there in Sector 2 between the two drivers. And just seems like some inconsistency there between both guys, causing a bit of seesawing action here. And Dylan's going to be hoping that that's enough momentum to send him forward on one of these attempts. He's going to have 2 more laps to do it, or 3 more laps to do it, I think, because he's going to be starting lap 29 here. Although they are lapped, I guess, so they will be doing one less lap. Then, so that'll help the fuel strategy. that's the one. That's the one solace, of course, to getting lapped here in this track. We got so many drivers being lapped that it's not so bad, because the fuel strategy which looked like it was going to be a little bit difficult, will now be not so hard, as they only have to do 1 less lap. Only 30 laps for these guys. Top 4 drivers, all A-class, and Paletti and Vihil, certainly 2 guys who have had to fight through a lot to make it to that top 4 here in this race. And then the next 4 guys, all B-class drivers. Zach Nuremberger there in 8th place. Not a horrible finish for him. Has had a couple better finishes earlier in the season, but again, came into this race already having locked the championship from Stephen Thompson and Kevin Bergquist behind. And it looks like he is able to take it a little bit easier. I think it's Greg Holland there, lapped car, getting out of the way of both of these guys as this battle continues to push on, as Ken Huber has started lap 30, which is a couple laps ago. Looks like, I think, Greg Holland in the background there having an incident through the Grassini chicane. It may have just been, yeah, it was just already before getting into the corner there, spinning on the brakes, just a little bit of steering under, I think, a bit too much speed, but frequent incident to have there in the Grassini chicane, as that is probably the slowest part of the track, but this track has no shortage of braking zones. and chicane. So a lot of places to overheat those tires or just, brake a little bit too much and send that car spinning. Dillon Jr. again sliding off the back of Bergquist. It does look like it's probably out of reach now with 2 laps to go. He has got 3 seconds in front with Bergquist beating Dillon Jr. there by 0.8 through Sector 1, as it seems that Bergquist has had that advantage in the Tamburello and Villeneuve chicanes throughout this whole race. Ken Huber now has taken that white flag as he's going to be starting this final lap with no threat behind. Got his first heat win. Well, got his first event win 2 events ago. Got his first heat win last heat, and will now be following it up with not only his second heat win in a row, but will be his first feature heat win. So saving the best for last here for Ken Huber, as he's really classed the field both in cleanliness and consistency, pace. Isn't unfortunately getting that fastest lap pipped by actually both Fahil and Paletti, narrowly getting his fastest lap here later in this event. But Ken Huber right now with a 20-second lead on another very strong driver in Steve Cubet. This is a strong showing for him. A driver who not everything went right for him at the start of the season. Actually, I think it's safe to say nothing went right for him. But this race has gone right for him so far. And we'll see if he's able to take that momentum into the sprint race and try to replicate what we've seen Nicholas Paletti do a few times with a double win on the night. Coming down the hill through turn 17 into the last couple corners of Ravazza before hitting the quote-unquote straight at Imola. It's been a difficult race for these guys. I don't think Ken Huber's made it look difficult. Did well in qualifying second, narrowly getting beat by Nicholas Paletti, and now crossing the line as the winner. Ken Huber, Adrian Garcia has had an incident, and Stephen Thompson has taken the position here on the last lap. Stephen Thompson, you can see his view here. Nothing he can do to avoid it. Lucky that Vihil just flies off there, but that was Aqua Minerale, which we haven't seen any incidents there into that section up until this point. Steve Cubet crossing the line, second place. And now Stephen Thompson as the B-class driver, putting in a purple Sector 1 here in this lap and looking to come across on the overall podium and as the B-class winner for the feature race tonight. Third win of the season for Stephen Thompson. Zach Nuremberg has 7 on the win, and the fastest lap of the race. Not just for B-class, but that's the overall fastest lap. Vihil coming in 4th. Paletti beating his fastest lap by a couple hundredths, if that, maybe just a couple thousandths. Mark Dillon Jr. having an incident late, had caught up to Kevin Bergquist. Now looking like he lost a few seconds, but not losing a position there. I think maybe an incident there in Ravazza. And he's crossed the line. So that is almost everybody's. Richard Curry now comes across to finish up his race. Unfortunately, the unlucky 11th place spot in this event. And he will be starting 11th in that sprint race. So as we prepare for the sprint race, we will take just a few moments and be right back. And we will see you there. All right, we are back here waiting for the gridding procedure for this sprint race. For some unknown reason, track map is back up functioning for you, so should help you follow the action a little bit better. No idea what changed there, but John Kelly is the guy who will be leading us here at the start of this race. Jeff McDonald will be the guy second to him. Ken Huber starting 10th after that great victory with Steve Cubay just behind him in 9th. Paletti finishing down at... I don't know if this will be easier or harder for Paletti on the start of this race. They just got a few more seconds to grid up here. Looks like it's going to start here. So John Kelly leading them from the grid here with 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's his early start for John Kelly. That is going to be a penalty. Jeff McDonald got that last week. Jeff McDonald probably also going to be taking the lead here. Horrible mistake, unfortunately, for John Kelly, as he's going to have a black flag assuredly from that early jump. I think just got a little bit antsy there at the front. Jeff McDonald is going to be happy to try to take the lead early here. Kelly's fighting him a little bit. And Zach Nurnberger trying to make his way. Nurnberger moving into second place. Nurnberger has made the move into second place, which is effectively, he's already making the move on John Kelly. He's got the position between John Kelly off the road. Way off the road there. Jeff McDonald there behind, and that is now Mark Dillon Jr. making his way into second. Back down to third. It is hard to tell what is happening here around Tosa, around the outside. Dillon Jr. pressuring Zach Nurnberger for the lead. Not able to make the move happen. Going to try to do it up the hill here. He's not going to be able to make anything happen to the left-hander, I don't think. Couldn't make the move. Nurnberger still holding first place. Both B-class drivers here up at the front. Both up from where they started, too. They did not start on the front row. Jeff McDonald, it seemed like he was going to be hand-wrapped and gifted the lead after John Kelly having to take the black flag, and he's out of this race. He's called it quits after that pretty tough penalty to swallow, unfortunately. Looks like Nurnberger starting to pull away a little bit. Maybe McDonald able to make the move. I see lots of positions moving in the back. I don't know if we saw a wreck there, potentially in the Grassini chicane. Let's keep a look, see if there's a red flag. Move being sent on Dillon Jr. by Garcia. Up 4, started 7th place, now all the way up to 3rd. And great start for him so far. Newbie's up 7 spots from where he started. Ken Huber was one of the drivers who went off track here in the Grassini chicane and actually spins, looping it. There was a car off to the back there. I think that was Steve Cubay. Yeah, it was Steve Cubay. So 2 drivers, our best 2 drivers from the last event. Incidents in the Grassini chicane. This one just a bit of a panic as it didn't brake quite enough for the drivers in front of him. Very minor collision for him, but difficulty getting back on the track. So this has been all shaken up here at the start here, especially from the guys who finished 1st and 2nd for us in the last race. And now Vahil here has 1st place just up the road visible, and as one of the fastest guys in that first heat. Wouldn't surprise me to see him trying to make his way up there soon, as Nicholas Paletti now making his way past Mark Dillon Jr. Right before they get into the left-hander of Piratella. Top 3 that we see on screen, all very close. And then a bit of a gap back to Paletti, who has then got a huge line behind him of Dillon Jr., Bergwist, Curry, and Newbie. Most of the drivers behind that have had an early incident. Garcia, strong exit through that corner, but there's just not a run, at least yet. You have to wait, here into the downhill as he's going to try it to the left, on the left side of McDonald, not really committing too hard, maybe setting up for the exit here. Strong exit, seals off from McDonald, stays in the track. A great move for him so far. Let's see if he's able to keep that coming down the straight. Jeff McDonald's going to be all over the back of him here. So we see McDonald pull out to the side already. He's going to be on the outside, the preferable side to go. They're inches away from each other, deeper on the brakes by Vahil, and a great way to take that corner there. Taking the curbs just as much as he needed to stay ahead. But McDonald giving him plenty of pressure, and that has now brought Nicholas Paletti to the back of him. All of the top 8 drivers within a second of the driver in front of them. a wild start so far for these guys. Stephen Thompson making a move around. Well, Greg Holland losing a couple positions there. May have had something happen. Ken Huber now at least back to where he started in 10th. But no one has fallen too many positions. Q-Bay's down 3. Again, we saw those early incidents. And there's Vahil. There's Vahil for first place on Nürnberger. Nürnberger not fighting it too hard. McDonald off the track. McDonald off the track. A lockup in Aqua Minerale, and just a little bit spooked by the how close he was getting to Nürnberger there, I think. He has now fallen way back from this field. Ken Huber also having an incident, but this one may have been a little bit more damaging. He makes his way around Stephen Thompson into the braking zone. And a collision between the two in Aqua Minerale. Just behind what we saw, where we saw Jeff McDonald go off, there was a collision between the two as he kind of slotted in pretty quick, and I just don't think that Thompson was ready for it. Took the arrow off that front wing in the braking zone and struggling to get it slowed down enough at that point. So lots of drama so far at the start of this race. Jeff McDonald only falling back to 7th place, but it is so close between all these guys. It's really not that far off the actual front of the field with how close these battles are. And right now, here he is trying to make a move on Richard Curry, who, if we remember, Richard Curry started in 11th. He had to start all the way back there in 11th. He's up 5, and the Christopher Newby car of the same livery behind him, he's up 7, starting in 15th after not being able to finish the previous race. So we saw him flipped upside down, hopefully finishing this race on all 4 wheels. Only 4 laps into this race, and it has been plenty electric. And it has brought Nicholas Paletti into the possibility of fighting for a win here, as Nürnberger losing some pace to him behind. It looks like Paletti's already going to beat. He's not going to be ahead into this turn, into the Grassini chicane. He's going to have to at least wait. We've seen a lot of guys make a move into Ravazza, so let's see if that move is made. But Garcia continues to pull away there at the front of the field as these two battle. No move looking. Not able to make the move there. Nürnberger fast through the second to last corner. We'll see if the draft is able to do anything for Paletti here. But it does look like the defense has been handled so well so far by Nürnberger. Fastest lap of the race for Garcia with a 138.1. Not quite as fast as what we saw, able to be put down by him and some others in that first heat. So we'll see if that continues to drop. Stephen Thompson into the pits, but I don't think that is too far off of... He may have picked up a very minor amount of damage in that collision with Ken Huber and just looking to get anything, because he can't see, doesn't have anyone telling him. Looking to get that repaired, as I think that he is just within strategy for fuel. We saw him able to take it longer than anyone else in that first heat. So if anyone's able to make it stretch and pit early, then Stephen Thompson definitely one of them, although he seems to still be in the pits here. And I don't know, it's not a terribly long pit lane, so hopefully nothing has happened to take him out of this race. Try to get a view of him, and he's out of the car. So Stephen Thompson, not sure what influenced that decision there, but he is going to be out of this race. Greg Holland and Dan Real. Dan Real was just about to make the move on Holland. And hard to tell what happened there. Let's see if we can get a different view of that incident. Dan Real passing Greg Holland for position and just rear ends him into the wall. Maybe just not expecting how early he was going to brake, but I mean that's the duty of the driver behind in those kind of incidents there. Greg Holland, I'm not sure he's going to be able to make it yet back to the pits. Looks like he probably towed there. We get back to our action here. As you can see, oh, and a spin by Newby or Curry. Newby, one of the two. Looks like it was Curry, I think, and the spin back there by McDonald as well. So Curry's got going. he is now in 8th place. McDonald had a spin. He's down 8 from starting in 2nd and really being given first at the start of the line from the penalty from John Kelly. We now have 11th back essentially out of this race. What was so close between the top 8 drivers has now introduced a few mistakes, a few incidents here, and it's starting to spread out a little bit more. Meanwhile, these guys are not spread out right now, as Dillon Jr. and Bergquist are pressuring Nürnberger here, our B-class champion, but struggling to maintain the lead here in the B-class. Well, I mean, he's keeping up with Paletti. It's just Dillon Jr. and Bergquist driving quite fast right now. Dillon Jr. looking close enough to think about a move potentially into turn 1, depending on how the exit of Rivazza here goes. A little bit wider, but it did look like a little bit more speed. I don't know if Nürnberger's going to be able to do much to defend this. He does have the draft of Nicholas Paletti in front, who's not too far ahead. He is pulling out from that a little bit, just maybe trying to break the toe, but he loses the toe of the driver in front. Dillon Jr. wanting the outside. I don't think he's going to have the run this time. And Bergquist had, in the first heat, been especially strong through these couple corners here at the start of the lap as well. But it did look like he fell back a bit in this go-around. No move being made here. We saw him try to make the pass into turn 1 at Tosa at the start of this race, but not close enough here this time either. Nürnberger, Dillon Jr., Bergquist, all 3 drivers who are still in the same position that they started. It has not been calm around them. It's certainly not been without its action. But all these guys starting in that reverse grid spot and maintaining your spot when you're pretty high up in the reverse grid. I mean, that's a positive thing to do. And Dillon Jr., a mistake right as I bring any sort of praise. Unfortunate curse there. I cannot believe he did not get larger damage than that. I think he might be okay. Just barely tapped that wall. Is going to lose the spot to Cube, but slotting in ahead of Richard Curry there at the very least. Newbie now 1.2 seconds back from Kevin Bergquist. Bergquist maybe was getting held back a little bit by Dillon, as they all were in a line. So probably not helping his pace unless he was just matching what he was doing. But they're all trying to get to that overall podium spot right now. Currently, Newbie is 3rd for the A-class drivers, but he does have a couple B-class drivers in front of him to get to that 3rd overall. Dillon Jr. into the pits. Again, probably fearful for any potential damage he got on that. He's in the pit strategy, so no sweat doing it now. Maybe would have preferred to go a little bit longer, as is usually the case. But it's not going to hurt his race to come in at this point. Right now, Vihil looking strong out front. We saw him look really strong at the start of qualifying, but was unable to get a valid lap in for the first couple attempts. And had some pace at the start of the race in the feature race. Unfortunately, collected in that incident with Nicholas Paletti, and then showed that pace again at the end of the race when he was not out of it, just unfortunately not able to contend there for the victory. But now with the 3.7 second gap on Paletti, and it doesn't seem to be going down, looking really good for him in this race to potentially come out with a victory. He's Paletti here, again, our champion for the season. So first win in the O4A category. Has a win in the GT3s already, and that was a pretty legendary season that he had himself there in the GT3s. This one rivaling it, although, of course, last couple races not going as clean as he probably would like, but it had already been locked up at this point. So not crucial to the results of the season for him here. But right now, what Vihil's trying to do is trying to get his first win on the season. He's got 3 podiums, but doesn't have a heat win yet. Chris Newby just made the move on Nürnberger. I don't know if there was an incident I didn't think they were that close. Nurnberger trying to fight back through Tosa. He's going to be on the inside. Bergquist maybe going to insert himself into this battle. It does not look like he's going to be able to. He's going to slot back behind. Nurnberger fighting for that position back, unable to get it. Way wide for Nurnberger as he's losing that position to both those drivers. We saw him go wide, fighting McDonald in the first heat. Unfortunately, going wide there as well. Take a look here. Chris Newby, what he had done, making the move on both guys at once. Splitting the two into the chicane. That was what a daring, and look how close they got on the exit there. Absolutely unreal pass, double pass by Chris Newby there, and really fighting hard to keep that position. Let's check that from another view here. Look at that, the battle in front between Bergquist and Nurnberger. Newby splitting the two down the middle, coming across to the right. I mean, that honestly, it may be the overtake of the season. That is one of the best overtakes we've seen all season, and keeping it clean, having to fight all the way through Tosa on the outside. A fantastic move for Christopher Newby there to move his way up, not just to fourth, but to third as well, in not the most popular section of track to make a pass. And yeah, it looks actually like there was a little bit of contact there between Nurnberger and Newby as they came through that crest. So Nurnberger is in his pit stall and already coming out. Potentially, again, another driver who may have had a minor amount of damage, but is in that pit strategy, may as well. But we're now seeing Mark Dillon Jr. come in again, which is strange. Did it maybe have something to do with this? Well, this is the incident that we saw. So I do not know what's making Mark Dillon Jr. come in again. Should have been fine on fuel unless there was just something that was not checked in the pit stop. That's the only thing I can really think of, because I doubt that he has a penalty for incident points 10 laps in. We haven't seen him involved in a ton, so we'll see if we can figure that out later in this race. Steve Cubet had a horrific start as he spun in the Grassini chicane, but keeping it clean since that point, and has now chipped his way through this field, now up to 5th place, just a second back from Kevin Bergquist, trying to get into 4th as some smoke from a car that's there in the pit lane, as I see some donuts being spun by Mark Dillon Jr., I believe. So maybe an indefinite pit stop for Dillon Jr. there. But Cubet looking strong in this race. Finished 2nd place in the last heat, and wasn't close enough to challenge Ken Huber for the battle for first, but wasn't being pressured behind for third either. Had a bit of a lonely race for most of that event there. So it's been a little bit more chaotic for him here today. Here tonight in this second heat, and see if he's able to grab a couple more positions as we now are getting close to halfway through this race. We're on lap 11, and Garcia continuing to hold that lead out front. Right now, just now broke 4 seconds. So it's not, I mean, the last lap, Garcia was a 138.31, a 138.37 for Paletti. Very close between the two, but Paletti needs to be catching up at this point, but time can be caught up in the pit stop. So we'll see if they come in now. Of course, they have the opportunity to do that by halfway point, but with none of them probably taking tires. I mean, they didn't take tires in the feature race, so I doubt they take it in the sprint. So really, they can just pit whenever they want. It's all maybe just to get out of some strategy. It's not going to do anything for them as far as splitting up the tire stints and trying to keep it fresh in that way. They're not going to be taking tires. It's just a top off of fuel, so it's purely ceremonial as far as when they come in, outside of maybe just using that opportunity to get an undercut or overcut where you don't have to deal with that traffic. You can pass somebody through the pit cycle. But right now, Paletti not close enough to threaten that as far as an undercut with a 4-second gap, so he needs to really be putting in some flying laps here. And it does not look like he actually fell back on the previous lap. as Vihil putting in a 37.6. Not the fastest lap of the event, but I think that may be the fastest lap of the race so far. And Paletti was a 138.25, so a whole 0.6 difference between the two. He has not caught up a lot during this lap. Steve Cubet, as we were falling there, now finally getting in that striking distance of Kevin Berquist, and a spin by Kevin Berquist through Acqua Minerale. Deft avoidance there by Steve Cubet in the middle of a turn, nonetheless. Let's see if Kevin Berquist is able to get going. He's here right in the middle of the corner, but no cars in the way, luckily. Thompson's coming up the hill now. So Berquist losing the spot to Cubet and Curry, but no worse than that and no damage. Really only 8 drivers in this race now, as generally the sprint race has been cleaner than the feature race, but it has not been so tonight. It has been very difficult for these drivers in the sprint race. I'm not sure what has made it so much harder. But if we take a look at the incident there for Kevin Berquist coming up the hill through Acqua Minerale, double right-hander. Yeah, just kind of snapped on him there in that little dip. You got to catch the dip to really get the most speed, but easy to over-rotate the car there. Nice little spin there to get going as fast as he could. So I misspoke. There are 9 drivers in this race. Stephen Thompson, after losing a lot of time early, is still out on track. Just made the move on Greg Holland, who's out of this race, and will be making his move on Mark Dillon Jr. out of this race coming up soon. Zach Nuremberger, basically the last of the real runners. He's the last runner on the lead lap. So not coming out of this, I think, with his favorite result so far, but as a victor for the B class, and I think still maybe coming out of this even as the second overall place driver, not a lot to complain about. As he had a pretty electric start to the season, and we saw some really great performances for him, and some good consistency. And actually, it seemed like he got slower when he caused less red flags. So he needed to just maybe have a few more incidents, and he could have had some strong finishes to the season. First place, nonetheless, as a victor for the B class. First time that we are running the A-B class split for O4A, which is a kind of qualification system that we trialed and really were happy with a couple seasons ago in E4A, and used here today, and planned to be used next season as well in O4A and E4A. Steve Cubet here. Now just put in the fastest lap of the race. He is on the charge, just 4 seconds to Christopher Newby in front. Christopher Newby last lap was 138 flat, which is quite competitive, as is, especially a guy who had to start in 15th place. But Cubet a 37.74, so not quite enough to catch up if that's going to be the only advantage. But if Newby slips up at all, that definitely leaves Cubet available for that podium. But I mean, Newby's looked pretty on it so far this race, especially that double overtake in between the two starting chicanes of Tamburello and Villeneuve. So we'll see if that continues on for Newby. As right now, I mean, if you look at the podiums, Newby, no podiums on the season so far. So this would be his first podium to grab here today. And what a place to do that at Imola. Very tough track. Anyone should be proud about doing well at Imola. And he's certainly doing well so far today. No drivers too close to each other on track right now. Still some pits to go, though. So as we now go through lap 15, Vihil not coming into the pits, and Paletti not coming into the pits as well. Very fast lap for Vihil, 37.86. Not quite as fast as Cubet was able to put in last lap, but faster than Cubet was able to put in this lap. So goes to show the pace that Garcia has out front. He is not slacking off despite that gap, even growing a slight amount, as he actually goes a little bit wide there, losing maybe a couple tenths, not too much. Into Tosa, keeping it in track. I'm curious to know what the incident counts look like, as far as if that's going to change any of these results that we're looking at. Ken Huber there at 37 as well. One of the few guys able to do that so far in both of these first two heats. But he has 12 seconds to Kevin Bergquist in front. 7 laps to go. It is possible, but it's not going to be easy. Kevin Bergquist's last lap was a 39.14, but I think we've seen him do faster than that. His fast lap of a 38.5. So we need to see if Ken Huber is able to make anything happen late in this race. It is possible, but it is not going to be easy for him to do. Very interesting, because I think that we've really only seen that one incident from Ken Huber at the start of this race. So there may have been something else that we didn't quite catch, because it looked like Ken Huber and Steve Cubay lost around the same amount of time from their early incidents in this race. But with Ken Huber's being, well, Cubay's was actually the one that had some contact. So it makes me extra confused on where all that time was lost. But Cubay now coming into the pit lane here from 4th place as Newby setting the fastest lap of the race. So no kidding when I said that he was flying out here today. Now the fastest lap in 3rd place. And Cubay needs to have a lightning pit stop here. And needs Christopher Newby to probably make a mistake on his. Looking clean for Cubay. Didn't catch the pit entry and see if he was able to nail that entry there or not. Kevin Bergquist behind, also coming into the pits. That's Ken Huber making his way around, at least on track here. This is 4th position currently. If I'm not mistaken, he hasn't made a pit stop yet, Huber. Oh, he has. Ken Huber made the pit stop on lap 6. Well, they did lose similar amount. I should have trusted myself. I think that he's in the pit range. He just pit very early. And this has now brought these two guys who were second in the first heat, but were not this close for really much of the race. Now brought them quite close to each other here at the end of this race with 6 laps to go and some question marks ahead on if anyone makes mistakes with their pit stops. But this is right now the fight for 4th and 5th. Vihil coming into the pits with Paletti following right behind. The gap before coming in was about 4.2 seconds. Keep that in mind as we see them exit. Vihil stopping in his box up. Oh, and he missed his box a little bit. That's going to be a loss of that. That's not a lot. It's probably only half a second, but not a good result to have. Paletti here, yeah, looking like his was a faster stop. So we wait for them to fully get out of this pit lane so we can get an idea of what the gap is now going to be. Stephen Thompson lapped car there in between the two, so that is not for position. Gap still 4.2 seconds. Pit stop time between the two. Well, I guess we don't have that recorded until we get around to the next lap. But I'm more interested really in the pit lane time, because it did seem like Garcia lost there as he had initially missed his pit box. And it is down to 4/10 from that 4.2 seconds now. But maybe Garcia getting out of that one without losing too much of a competitive advantage, as much as it may have seemed like he was going to, based on the initial mistake. We'll see that when they cross the line. And Newby there sitting, Newby coming into the pits as well. And in 3rd place still. So 4 seconds back to Ken Huber. And plenty doable to defend that, as, again, fastest lap of the race is held by Christopher Newby. So, if anything, Ken Huber has to worry about ever even being able to catch up to him. Vihil coming through the final section of this track with just a handful of laps to go in this race, in this event, in the season. And he's going to be trying to come home with his first heat win. Nicholas Paletti, the multiple-time winner, is trying to get to 10 wins. Double-digit wins would be on the table for Paletti if he's able to catch up here and make the move. It does not seem like he is catching up quite enough yet. And actually, you see there, I don't know what happened with Paletti's stop, but Paletti's stop was actually a little bit slower pit lane time than Garcia. So we didn't quite catch him coming into the box. Potentially he missed his box as well. Newby was a second faster than both of them, maybe showing what the pit stops overall time really should have been closer to. But Cubey there now setting the fastest lap of the races. Each of these drivers continues just slowly improving upon that fastest lap, and he's doing so in trying to make this pass on Ken Huber. It's going to make it difficult for Ken Huber to try to catch up to Christopher Newby if he has to defend too much from behind. I don't think we've seen that much so far. Richard Curry losing a lot of time in an incident here, and that is why we saw Zach Nurnberger get the spot. It's through the first chicane. Or that was through after the second. That was through the second. Variante Villeneuve just going way off track and struggling to get it going on the sand. And that's Nurnberger there coming through at race speed, avoiding the incident and getting the spot. Cubey and Huber taking it to the end of this race here. Was our 1-2 in the last race after both of them having incidents in the same corner on lap 1 for this sprint. This is a battle for 4th, 5th, and both drivers looking to probably finish off of the podium here, but the points are going to be important nonetheless. Now Nicholas Paletti turning on the afterburners with a 137.57, and as I said, Cubey putting in a 137.507 on the outside into Tamburello. He was less than a tenth away. I wonder what happened to lose that. He was so close to already making that move on Huber into the turn. Somehow just lost a little bit of momentum. But Paletti trying his best to catch up to Garcia at front. It's now down to 3.4 seconds, but with 3 laps to go, he's got to be going, a second and a half faster. He's got to be massively faster to really catch up here at the end of this race. Cubey, however, absolutely close enough to make this move on Ken Huber, but just hasn't had the opportunity yet. No mistakes seen by Ken Huber, and he's been fast enough in the sections where he needs to be. Again, still confused on where that speed disappeared to down the straight last time, and he's fallen back in these few corners here now from Huber, and getting closer to that 1 second mark now between the two. Down into the Ravazza double left-hander. Very interesting, totally different lines between the two. It looked like Huber maybe a little bit too fast, and it looked like Cubey maybe a little bit too flat. So neither driver, I don't think, taking advantage of that final corner there. We'll see if the overall lap times are still strong. So, personal best for Ken Huber there of a 137.6, but Cubey there a 138 flat, which is a good half second off his personal best, which he just did the previous lap. So I think Ken Huber's line working a little bit better there in that last corner, and Cubey was nearly wheel to wheel coming into turn 1 last lap. Not quite as close this time, and this is 3 laps to go. Not a lot of opportunities left for him, as he really just needs to close this gap and try to force a mistake before then setting up a move. Meanwhile, at the front, Nicholas Paletti has continued to draw that gap down a little bit. He actually was 9/10 faster on the last lap. But again, that is not enough with 3 laps to go. Even with just that raw pace, that's not going to get him there, let alone the fact that he needs to make the pass. You can catch up, but making the pass is another thing to do. You got to have a little bit more time, and you got to have the right opportunity to set that up. So if this race was a little bit longer, I would feel more confident about Paletti's chances here, but it is going to be a difficult ask for him to now catch up this 3-second gap with 2 laps remaining as they came around the last couple corners there on the 20th of 22 laps right there on screen. Paletti just barely under 3 seconds. It is not going to be easy for him to catch up. And for Garcia Villa, 37.292. Incredibly fast for Paletti with 37.479, but unbelievable pace for Vihila at front. Certainly a response to the pace behind of Paletti, and Cubey pipping that by a couple thousandths. Now at a 137.27, but not enough to make the move on Ken Huber. Both these drivers running real fast on screen here, Huber and Cube, but we haven't seen him go wheel to wheel. Shockingly, Huber's been just fast enough to keep him behind. So we see him take a couple different lines again there through the Villeneuve chicane, and they're coming up on a lapped car there, I think. No, that is Christopher Newby. That is Christopher Newby for position. I don't think there's the time for Huber to... Yeah, there's not really time for Huber to make this, but that is a... I thought that Christopher Newby was a little bit further up the road than that, but 2.2 seconds, yeah, that is him there. I shouldn't have to worry too much, as they're going to be getting the white flag next time they come around. They're nearly done with this lap as is. Paletti catching up a slight amount on this lap, but it looks like Garcia is going to be able to take it home as long as he keeps this last lap mistake free. Coming through the second corner of Ravazza through the left-hander. I had no idea where the safety points are at on either of these heats, but as what we're looking at, Garcia here is taking the white flag and trying to get his first heat win of the season here in the final sprint race of the entire season. We'll see if he's able to do it here. Just needs to keep it mistake-free. Doesn't have to stress too much about the driver behind. Steve Cube, meanwhile, close enough, 2/10, sub 2/10. He's just not close enough to make the move. Ken Huber is just fast enough to keep him behind at all the spots where he needs to be. And it has to be frustrating for Steve Cube, but Ken Huber keeping this quite mistake-free so far. So we don't see any move. We saw Tosa as a popular passing spot earlier in this race. No move able to be made there. And nearly a spin for CQB. You can see him cranking that wheel. He loses some time. And I think that may have been the nail in the coffin for QB here. As it's, now dropping that back to over 0.8 of a second. Tires a little bit warm. Now over 0.9. So I think that is it without any wrecks. And there was I think there may have been a wreck. Christopher Newby. I think Christopher Newby may have just had an incident. He has. He's not lost the spot. There was a bit of a mistake there in Aqua Minerale, but he keeps the spot as they come through Grassini. Just one more difficult section for him to go through. Garcia leading the field. Now through the second to last, go to the last corner. We'll go over to him. I think that Newby may be able to keep this spot, but here is Adrian Garcia coming across the line. First win of the season for him here in the sprint race at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Right behind him, Nicholas Paletti, your champion. Fastest lap set by Garcia, fast lap pipped by Paletti. Christopher Newby behind, and he will maintain that third place. Finish with his first podium on the season as well. Best result of the season for him so far, with Ken Huber, Steve Cube finishing right behind the two. Kevin Berquist and Zach Nuremberger, the only two drivers left on the track after this very destructive race that we've had so far. Nuremberger trying to compete to catch up, but was not able to here at the end of this race. Kevin Berquist, a great finish for him. First place for the B-Class drivers here in the sprint. That right there is the second win on the season for Kevin Berquist, and that is podium number 12 for Zach Nuremberger, as he comes across the line as the champion in the B-Class. What a finish to this season. It was a difficult track. The drivers showed it. We saw some great moves being made. And let's check the official final results of this sprint race here tonight. Adrian Garcia coming across the line with the first win on the season, 2.6 seconds ahead of Nicholas Paletti, your series champion, by a massive margin. Christopher Newby comes in with his first podium in third. Ken Huber and Steve Cube rounding up fourth. Fifth, Kevin Berquist, Zach Nuremberger finished first, second for the B-Class, with Richard Curry in eighth, and Stephen Thompson getting his seventh podium of the season there in ninth. Mark Dillon Jr. comes 10th with Greg Holland in 11th. And Jeff McDonald, Dan Real, John Kelly, Paul Boyle, Christopher Craig, and Travis Bell, all the drivers behind them. A lot of drivers not able to finish this race for many different reasons. Nick Paletti here, out on track, giving us a bit of a celebration here as he celebrates with his invisible pit crew on a great championship season. And he showed himself right at the very start to be one of the the main competitors. Of course, a bit of a different story for him than it's been in E4A, where just had a lot of bad luck. This season for O4A, for Nicholas Paletti, has been pretty much devoid of any bad luck. It's been a fantastic season for him, and won 9 races on the season out of 14. 9 out of 14 races, and that would be 9 out of 10 counted races, too, when you add in the drop week. So massive congratulations to Paletti as we see this victory for him. Victory donuts on the main straight. And a little love tap on the wall to top it off. So that is our race here at Emilia-Romagna. Let's head over to the waiting room and see if we got some people waiting for us. Let's see, we do have Nicholas Paletti already. I will steal him from the chat real quick. Nick, you get me in the booth here.
I gotcha.
We caught your donuts there at the end. It was a tough fought race here today. Really just slinging it all over the track, trying to catch up to Adrian there at the end. And both of you guys had a pretty incredible pace. Out of 10 counted races, 14 races run, out of 10 counted races, 9 wins, a 90% win rate. Did you come into the season, with just like a ton of preparation? Does the F3 car just really gel with you? Because, you've been strong in O4A races before and even in the F3 before, but this was just like another level this season.
I think this was the first year I ran with the direct drive wheel that I had. I think since we took that season off, or the last season that we kind of paused and didn't finish, I didn't get to really race the F3 with direct drive. So did that. This was the first like full season doing that, and I think it really just helped with controlling the car and getting a grip on how I could slide it through some corners, keeping it on the edge of grip and extracting the speed. So, I can't point to one thing in particular. I think it's just been practicing and just trying to get more acquainted with some cars that are a little bit more sketchy instead of some of the cars that or have a lot more driving assists. So it was a really enjoyable season. I don't know, point to one thing that I can accredit the wins to other than some lucky races, honestly.
Yeah, it was a race where unfortunately you had an early incident in that feature race. You had the pole position, actually losing that first place spot into the Tosa corner, which that was a pretty fantastic move made by Ken Huber, and then getting involved in an incident, unfortunately, with Vahil. So it did, was this sprint kind of just viewed as like a do-over? Because obviously you came into this race already with that championship secured, so it didn't really matter how it went. But I know you wanted to get, that double win to win all 10 counted races.
Yeah, I wanted to get a win. That was really the only thing that I was looking for. So it led to me pushing probably a little bit harder than what I would have if it was for a normal race. That first race was unfortunate, and I still have to go back and look at the replay with Adrian. But I think I hit one of the turtles and went out into him, and I feel real bad because normally I probably would have backed out of one of those if it was a normal race, but I just had to race him in the corner, and it just ended in contact. So trying to make up for that led to a lot of pushing and a lot of off tracks and some fast laps, but it was enjoyable, but definitely wasn't the perfect way to end a season, but I'll take it.
So again, congratulations on that victory. Is there anyone you wanted to shout out or anything for the season here?
Yeah, I want to shout out all the other drivers, especially just everybody who's been stuck with us the whole season. This is probably, in my opinion, I think this is our best open wheel season we've had so far. Every race was competitive, and we got to the end of the season, and only the last 2 races we had no red flags. So I think that's really great for all of us to be able to go from red flags every race to then running clean at the end, I think, is a big testament to all the guys who are racing there. And I mean, there's so many fast guys that I think could be there if they would have had some better internet connections or some better luck here and there. So just shout out to the whole competition, especially to the Doge Squad members who've been practicing. They didn't have the best race tonight, but they're always great to have around to bounce ideas off of. Yeah, final shout out to you and Aaron, who I know Aaron couldn't be here tonight, but we're thinking of him and can't wait for eventually if we get him back in the booth, it'll be awesome.
Yep, we appreciate the kind words, and yes, we're thoughts out for Aaron Claybaugh. Just had a family emergency, so that's what's taking him out of this season finale here. I know he really wanted to be here, and I know he's been watching on the YouTube. So, unfortunately missing him here, and we'll get to see him in the future, I'm sure. So, congratulations again on your race here tonight, on that podium, and on that championship clinch that you got a couple weeks ago.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your night, and maybe see you in E4A next week.
Yeah, will do. Have a good night, Nick.
Yeah, bye.
All right, that was our championship winner, Nicholas Paletti. Now I'm going to bring in Ken Huber. I think Ken Huber won tonight's race. As the overall points, it's hard to tell. He won. He got first and fourth. I have to imagine he did. It was up and down all the way through. We're going to bring Ken Huber in here. Ken, you get me in the booth here.
Hey, Zach, how's it going?
It's going good. I think you won tonight's race. I can only do so much mental math here.
One man show up there in the booth, right?
Yeah. I can only do so much mental math here alone. I think with that win in the feature and then the fourth place there in the sprint, I think that sealed it up for you as another event win. So today was second event win on the season. It was your second heat win, and that was also your first feature win of the season too. So really strong, last few events here, kind of just shaking off some bad luck you had at the start of the season. I think other than maybe just your internet connection working for you, what's gone right over this last month?
Well, the second half of the season obviously has gone right. Like you said, my internet connection. I also had to work on my qualifying. I came in to the league late last season, and this was my first full season with the league. And I quickly realized that, qualifying mid-pack or whatever, you tend to find a lot of trouble back there. So it's like, I better step up my qualifying. And so I did, and that made a difference. I was able to run up front most of the races, so having a good time.
How were you able to shake off the early incident you had in the sprint in this race? I mean, actually, not just you, but both you and Steve Cubey both having incidents in the Grassini chicane right at the start of this sprint race. How were you able to kind of shake that event off and get going again to then battle with him specifically at the end of the race for fourth and fifth?
Well, even going back to the feature, this track is all about, especially with this car, is all about hitting the curbs correctly, right? And timing and hitting your marks on these curves is just critical. And I knew that a lot of guys were going to have problems with it, so I just focused, put my head down. After that incident, put my head down and knowing that there was going to probably be problems, and I might be able to sneak out, but get my way back up front. So that was kind of my strategy: just put the hammer down and go.
And then the other highlight I really wanted to bring up, one of the best overtakes we saw so far, throughout the whole night, was that move that you made on Paletti into turn one at the start of that feature race into Tosa, or not turn one, into Tosa, turn 7. Did you plan on setting that move up at the start of the race, or was that just an opportunity that opened up? Because it looked like maybe he went a little bit wide and had to lift a bit. Where'd you get the confidence to send that move on the outside?
Yeah, no, I had some cold tire practice during practice, and I specifically worked on what I was going to need to do on cold tires there. And so I wasn't necessarily planning on passing him there, but that opportunity opened. And like I said, with the practice I had on cold tires, I was like, oh, I'm going to take it. So, and when you're racing Paletti, you got to take the opportunity when it comes. As a matter of fact, I was down in the waiting room talking to him, and I said, hey, man, sorry about being so aggressive with you. I said, but you're so fast that I got to take it when I can get it. Otherwise, I might never see that opportunity again. So that's kind of how that worked out. And by the way, congrats to Nicholas Paletti on that championship. That was well deserved.
Yeah, it was a very strong season for him. Ended up getting 9 heat wins out of the 14 races that we raced. You came into this race in a really close battle for second in the A class. You were 4 points back from Paul Boyle and 2 points back from Steve Cubay. Unfortunately, Paul Boyle had a couple incidents in his race, and then obviously we saw you wheeling it out with Steve Cubay in both heats. So coming out of here tonight in that second place position, what are you looking forward to as far as momentum-wise, taking that forward into the next season?
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Back when the league announced that we were running these F3 cars, I've never run open wheel. So I was like, and it showed at Silverstone, I wasn't that fast. I was able to get a third out of Silverstone, but I wasn't that fast. I didn't know what I was doing. So, I put my head down and learned how to drive these cars. And now they're kind of fun. So I normally shy away from this type of car, but I'm actually having fun with it. I think I got a pretty good handle on how to drive it now, and looking forward to next season, both here in the O4A and the E4A.
Well, it was a great showing for you tonight, and congratulations on that second in the championship. And again, I know, like you just mentioned right there, you'll be wheeling it around the final track for E4A next week. So congratulations here tonight, and good luck to you next week. And then maybe we'll hear from you again for E4A.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, I just want to thank you and your partner there in the booth. The broadcasts are really cool. You do an outstanding job, both of you do. And I know it kind of goes uncredited sometimes, but and I know you're going to be back on the racetrack, which I'm really looking forward to that. So look forward to seeing you out on the track as well next season.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. The kind words are always appreciated. So thank you very much for that, Ken, and good luck to you next week in the E4A finale.
All right. Talk to you later, Zach. Have a good one.
That was your second place finisher for event winner tonight. Second place finisher for the championship, Ken Huber. So to get the what you just mentioned there, we are coming back with racing in a few weeks for the next season. It's going to be a shorter season. There will not be a broadcast for O4A or E4A. It will be a shorter format, and me and the other co-commentators just taking a short break from that. We'll be right back at it when we start with the new year with another full-length season as we test some things out in this mini season coming up, as there's still a lot of interest in both E4A and O4A being around, and just taking a look at some options for that. So again, if you are here for the broadcasts, we still have our season finale for O4A next week. So you can see us there in 1 week time, where we will have our E4A championship sorted out at Road Atlanta, where we may see Nicholas Paletti come away with 2 championships in one season here, as he is 10 points ahead on Zach Nurnberger, who was our B-class champion in the LMP3 class. So keep an eye out for that. If you're here for that Road Atlanta race next week at E4A. If you're here for O4A, we will not be broadcasting next season for the shortened mini season before the holidays, but we will be back at it with the broadcasts starting next year. So again, hope to see you next week for that E4A finale, and if not, we'll see you again in the next year. Have a good night, everyone.